first of many podcasts. My name is Brendan Shaw, and what I'm going to do is just start off with a very informative and powerful fact. South African organizations on average face 1,884 cyber attacks per week. And these are the stats from Q1 in 2025. And what we're seeing is an increase of 69% year on year, which is fascinating. And that's why we're here. We're here to discuss the relevance of cybersecurity. We're here to discuss why it is a very popular space to move into. So welcome, everyone. My name is Brendan Shaw. I'm the CEO of Mabili. My background is accounting. I studied accounting. So you may be thinking, why is an accountant learning about IT and discussing IT? But the reason being is because it is such a powerful space that we're in, and it's an industry that needs a lot of attention. So welcome. And next, I'd like to introduce Treasure.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Hello, everyone. My name is Treasure Mgati. I am a senior managing cyber consultant at an insurance company called Aon. I've got quite a healthy amount of experience within the cyber field. I've got 8 years experience across all industry verticals, including manufacturing, the health sector, retail, and it's at all different levels, be it strategic, operational, and tactical. And I'm very excited for this podcast today and the very, very cool stuff we'll be discussing today. Thank you, Brendan.
Perfect. Henry,
yeah, thank you for that introduction, Brendan, and thank you, Treasure, and thank you both for being here today. I am a web developer, senior web developer. I've got just over 16 years of experience in the field, and my main work is web development, but I've also branched out into software development. And yeah, I'm also a mentor at Mabili, and I do development work for Mabili as well. So I'm very tightly integrated with the Mabili systems and processes. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here, very excited. And obviously for me, this is a big concern. I need to make sure these days that, it always has been a concern and a consideration, but more and more, everything I deploy needs to be secure. So I'm very interested, and I think that I'll be getting a lot out of this podcast. Thank you.
Perfect. So, Treasure, I think maybe you can firstly give us a high-level insight as to why cybersecurity matters today and how relevant and profound it is.
Sure thing. I think currently cybersecurity is more relevant than it's ever been, right? We've seen the very, very steady growth of the field. And I think what's driven that growth is the increasing capabilities in tech, right? Tech is being developed at an alarming rate, right? You've got artificial intelligence, now you've got agentic AI. And what that does from a risk perspective, it brings a lot of volatility, right? Both from a personal and enterprise level. These technologies are always meant to make our lives easier, right? Because they enable availability. But at the same time, they need to be safe in order for them to do what they're intended to do, which is where cybersecurity comes in, right? A lot of people would love to use these technologies and pay no mind to the safeguards. But I think as cyber specialists within the field, we are there to always parameterize what is possible before risk materializes. So I think it's very, very relevant in that sense. And I think people are starting to realize that cyber is not just a company problem, and it's not just a tech problem, right? I think it's a personal problem, because we are having many, many incidents where people's WhatsApp and phones are hacked, bank accounts are being emptied, phishing emails, and that sort of thing. So I think people are starting to realize the relevance of how it actually pertains to them specifically versus it being just some hacker in a corner, because it affects all of us, right? Cyber risk is an element that affects each and every one of us each and every single day, which I think is why it's such an important thing for us to focus on.
Henry, you
Yeah, I was on mute there. Thank you, Treasure. And certainly, and I think even as we've discussed before, I have a concern with cybersecurity on a professional level as well as a personal level. So is the threat equal? And how do we protect ourselves at the individual level as well?
Definitely. And just to piggyback off of that, on the professional level, Henry, so within my job, I'm in management consulting, right? And we have a lot of engagements where we will conduct vulnerability assessments, we'll do scans on externally facing infrastructure, or we will do, code review assessments and work with development teams to ensure that they have the right controls in place to ensure that their testing is from the beginning of the life cycle within the software engineering and development space. And we've seen a lot of
realize that how powerful AI is, and how many errors they're finding within their systems and processes. So I mean, that in itself is a blue and a red aspect of it. You've got the blue mythos, which is trying to find holes, and then you've got the red, where you can have a lot of cyber attacks trying to penetrate those systems.
I just reminded me now of what I was going to say. Thank you very much, Brendan. So yeah, I think, and just talking about Mythos, what they were talking about, actually, it's a big threat because it is able to find loopholes that have been embedded in systems, in repositories, in code for 10 years and never been found. And now Mythos is, through testing, has been able to find all these vulnerabilities. So what I was just saying about AI being part of the blue team is that it's really just, it's exhaustive, the measures. You can keep going on and on and on, putting in security measures in place. And, like we were saying, productivity is a thing. And there was a balance before where the threat wasn't as great. So we had to put a certain amount of time and energy and resources into balancing out the threat. The threat was here. So now the threat's here. Now we need to increase that. But at the same time, we still need to maintain our productivity. So what AI can definitely assist us with, and what we all know is it's good with, is strategy and planning. So we can use AI to put together a security plan, task list. We can deploy, when I say deploy, we can push out that plan to all the relevant departments, and then they can use AI to help them to implement it. It takes off a massive load, energetically, mentally, bandwidth, and from a time perspective as well. So AI can enable us to put the measures in place that we need to confidently in order to combat the increased risk that we're finding.
That's a very good point that you raised, Henry. And I am a massive champion for AI, right? I mean, it's made my job a whole lot easier. And it's cut down our lead times with regards to when we deliver project to our
Me
clients
too.
much shorter. But I think another thing, because, dealing with a lot of clients, I'm always noticing, a form of trend. I think where we sometimes lose it, just as human beings, right, both at a personal and an enterprise level, is that we have this very, very overly dependent, mindset when it comes to tech. And I'll lay out a use case for you with regards to how this can look like, because as helpful as AI is, if we don't approach it with the right mindset, it can also be dangerous. So one of the things that we do within our work is basically help clients be underwritten with cyber insurance, which is a topic we definitely should get to at some point or within another podcast, right? Which is a risk transference measure. So you'll find that an insurer will say, in order for us to underwrite you for this risk, you will need to have this and this and this in place, right? And then the client will say, okay, no, we'll do that in like a few days, right? They generate a very, very brief InfoSec policy, yada, yada, yada. And then in the review stage, we sit with their IT teams, we sit with their business teams and ask them how this looks like within their own enterprise. What does this mean? What is a domain controller, right? What is a domain controller? Then you have an issue where there's just no knowledge. because they have the policy there, they know what it should look like, but they don't know what it actually means and what they would actually do when the time comes. And I think a very dangerous mindset that I've seen a lot of senior management and executives take is that they think because of AI, they can now sort of pull back on resourcing, right? And say, no,
Yeah.
instead of 5 IT managers, we just need 1, right? Because the rest of the AI
Yeah.
is going to do a lot of the work, which is completely not the case.
Yeah.
And the data for itself, we're still seeing the trends going upwards with regards to successful attacks. I mean, one of the biggest banks, if not the biggest bank in Africa, recently had a data breach 2 months ago. Standard Bank, you know.
Wow.
If Standard Bank can have a data breach. They invest billions, I'm sure, in their cybersecurity. It really goes to tell you that there's a lot more that still needs to be done, even with all this automation, because automation scales the threat landscape as well, right? Which is what you were talking about with regards to them being here. If the threat goes higher, we need to go higher at all times. So it's almost like we're playing catch up.
Yeah. We still need human resource. We still need people on the ground. And I've always maintained is that AI is not taking our jobs. It's not taking anyone's job. It's changing our jobs. And
exactly,
the awareness and personnel growth in companies is about, entrenching adaptability and entrenching skills development and entrenching this idea of not just, oh, well, we're going to retrench 100 employees, we don't need you anymore, but we're going to make you part of our AI transformation plan. Because companies who do that, who laying off thousands of, these tech companies, because, we so tech forward, but that's arrogant. You don't know yet what's going to happen. And that's a major risk.
Yeah. Even just we hear stories of tech companies offloading and retrenching a lot of employees and using AI as the reason. But there's also a lot of reading that a lot of those companies had too much talent from the start. So everyone's saying we're using AI to increase productivity, but the possible reason is the first hand is not AI. It's just they were over compensating on the talent. So that's what we do find.
Maybe it's helped them to uncover that redundancy,
Yes,
which is also a use. Yeah.
And take a more lean approach. Yeah.
All right. So that's a lot of theory and what's going on now into the action stage, and especially for everyone listening. And this very much ties into Mabili and what Mabili offers. Is let's start talking a little bit about careers and opportunities. How does someone get into cybersecurity? Is it something that's accessible? Excuse me. What are the prerequisites of skill, experience, qualification? What are some different pathways? And are the CompTIA certifications still relevant? I know they've been around for ages and ages. Give us some insights especially for someone who's interested in getting into cybersecurity. And is it as glamorous as what we see on TV?
All right, not a problem. So with regards to cybersecurity, I'd say the main and most important prerequisite is passion, right? If you've got a nice, keen interest in the field, there is nothing that you cannot learn, right? Yes, it definitely needs a level of technical aptitude. Yes, you have to be, logical. You've got to be strategic as a person. You've got to have an affinity for systems, right, and technology. But I think the beautiful thing about cyber is that, unlike previously, because of the wide scaling that is going on with technology, the barriers of entry have been removed. So the traditional route of having to do, a computer science degree, and then majoring in your honors with cybersecurity, that is not much as a prerequisite. There are many other avenues that one can take, including the CompTIA certifications, which I myself have, right? They are absolutely phenomenal, especially at an introductory level. They really lay the foundation beautifully. especially for a lot of people that want to pivot into cyber, but it's non-exclusionary in the sense that even if you just come out of matric and you're just a fresh student out of high school, it still allows you to learn and enter easily within the space. So very, very relevant certifications. Career pathways in cyber, endless. Absolutely endless. You could be so many things. I think a lot of people that are not familiar with cyber, every single time they think of cybersecurity, they think of hacking, right? Which is not wrong. They always think of this guy in some corner in a hoodie, doing all this scripting and hacking and that sort of thing. But it's actually much broader than that. In fact, hacking is a very niche part of the cyber universe. There are many, many career verticals that one could enter into. You've got governance, risk, and compliance, which is a very, very crucial pillar that we are finding within organizations, because cyber and IT have been lacking in strategy for the longest time. You've got incident response, right, where you can become a SOC analyst and work in a security operations center, which is usually a 24-hour operation, and there are shifts, basically blue teaming, right? That's where you analyze attacks in real time as they come. You can be a cybersecurity architect, right? This is basically where you build out and map out the infrastructure and how it integrates into the business architecture, with regards to data, systems, integrations, and that sort of thing. Or you can be part of the red team and be a hacker, right? So blue team is defense, cyber defense. Red teaming is basically cyber offense. So both of them are good guys in theory, or in practice. The red team basically are the guys that say, okay, let's attack your system as much as we can to see what it is that you need to fix ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And then they basically test the effectiveness of the controls that it is that you've set up. And then once that's done, they'll issue a report and say, okay, we were able to do this, do that, do that, do that. So you need to fix this and this and this. So demand is increasing across all cyber domains. It's not even just one, all of them, right? Because risk is increasing in all of them. So definitely a fantastic career opportunity, pays immensely well, and that is driven by the demand. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed that there is a big recruitment drive within the Northern Hemispheric countries, and Australia and Dubai, seeking out a lot of resources here in South Africa, right? Because they don't have enough themselves. So it's quite a phenomenal opportunity if you were thinking of getting into this field, or even thinking of pivoting, and maybe you are not satisfied with your current career trajectory and you feel like you want to do something that is a lot more contemporary and that is, better paying. It would be the greatest time to do so. Cybersecurity is literally the future. Yeah.
Great. And then someone coming to to Mabili and doing the courses with Mabili. So obviously we have a different model. It's not full-time in classroom, and it's also not purely self-study. The big component of it, certainly the knowledge gaining is self-study. We partnered with Coursera for the actual knowledge content. But then the big components and the differentiator with Mabili is the mentoring side, and you are the mentor for cybersecurity at Mabili. Would you like to just give us a bit of background, and if a student comes to Mabili, what can they expect, and how long does the course take? How much time do they spend with you? How does it look?
Fantastic. So Mabili is a fantastic academic skills and training organization, right? And I think what we offer as mentors is a very individualized experience, right? We understand that we have a lot of students that don't necessarily have a technical background and that might need a lot of hand-holding and assistance, and which is where we come in, right? We don't just throw the academic content at you, but we basically assist you in understanding. If you need more time, we're always there to assist, and basically just ensuring that we parallel the academic knowledge with real life experiences, which is why I think as Mabili mentors, we have a lot of industry experience, right? We're not just tutors from university that just studied a book. We see these things in real life. We work with clients that are hit by cyber attacks. So I think from an expertise standpoint, we're very able to contextualize a lot of what we teach in a way that you can understand what it looks like in real life. Because, just doing Q&A for an exam because you want the piece of paper is not enough. You have to know what it is that you're studying. That's how you become phenomenal within your field. And at Mabili, we definitely have that to give to you.
Yeah. And certainly
And just to add,
go for it, Brendan.
as well as that, is there's the groups or cohorts, and the students learn together. There's a lot of studies on peer-to-peer learning and how it assists students. Perfect example, if you're left alone to go with recordings, you may put it off. You may say, I'll do it on the weekend. And then you may not get through all of it. And the reason for peer-to-peers is your peers hold you accountable. When you do group work, when you're discussing together how topics are aligned and digging into each topic.
Yeah, and certainly what I've found in my courses that I've mentored is you can clear a roadblock that a student is having in 15 minutes of getting them to share their screen, looking over their shoulder. Okay, what's the challenge you're having? Let's work through the exercise together. And often if they're working in a sandbox environment where they're needing to use the terminal, put in commands, installation, they've been struggling with that for a week, or the week that we haven't had a session. I've just been able to look over their shoulder, and then very subtle details of like syntax and okay, but you should be doing this in a different environment, and very fundamental knowledge where, and I've seen this where with people who are self-study, the big challenge with that is knowledge gaps, because when you self-study, you study in order to complete a task. You don't study for baseline knowledge. So that's where I've seen that mentors, and I've been able to offer a lot of value in courses as well.
100% Henry.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, guys, that's a great point to wrap up here. Thanks so much. This has been for me, this has been a really nice, clear podcast. I think we dove into some really interesting and relevant topics, and I look forward to the next episodes in this series. So I guess as just to wrap up, let's go around the room and each of us just, what's been something that's been a key insight for you, starting with Brendan.
Perfect. Thanks, Henry. So I think the key insight is to how relevant cybersecurity is. And as Treasure mentioned, they're not just some individual at the put onto the side waiting for a problem to occur. There's a lot of thought done beforehand. You need to ensure that you are testing these products on their journey from start to finish, and not just waiting for the individual to hack your system, and the result of that is a lot of pain and a lot of money for the companies. So cybersecurity happens throughout the product journey, and I think that's quite key to understanding how relevant the cyber industry is.
Yeah, sure. And for you, Treasure?
I think my key insight, I'll just take it the career route, right? I think there's never been a better time to join cyber right now, right? I think if you even have the slightest interest, grab it with both hands, because the industry is literally waiting for you. Companies are literally waiting for you. So don't waste any time. Sign up, get that certification, get that course. You don't necessarily need to go to a university and get a degree, which is great in and of itself, but the opportunities are endless, and this is definitely the time to maximize on those.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And for myself, I think one of the biggest insights of knowledge that you shared today, Treasure, was talking about the mergers and acquisitions and the ransomware. And it's that's fascinating for me. I mean, it's so organized. It's not just people in their basement and hacking just for the sake of it because it's exciting. Sure, I mean that is part of it, but this is organizational at a huge level. I mean, if we look at the sort of above ground, if we can call it that, industry compared to the underground industry, I mean, they match. We don't see them and it's not marketed and that kind of thing, but for every global organization and corporates and franchise and all of that, there's just as much organization and infrastructure and hierarchy in the opposite side as well. So that's was really interesting for me. Okay. Yeah, thanks very much. We can wrap up here. Thanks, guys. It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed this. Looking forward to the next one. And for anyone listening, we at mabiliskills.com. So MABILISKILLS.com. And you can find all you need to know there on cybersecurity and enroll for your next course. Thanks very much.